I grew up in a household where, as you can imagine, wasn't just our newspaper that was an important part of our family conversation. And I always tell people that the newspaper is like a fifth sibling. We have 4 kids, and the newspaper has been a part of our lives since I was in elementary school. But our conversations at home were always community-minded conversations. My parents were activists, parent activists. When there was a problem at a school, they weren't the folks who would just complain. They'd figure out how do we solve the problem.
Growing up, we always heard stories of history, the importance of history, the importance of knowing where you come from. And our parents always told us stories of who we are and where we came from. Traveling every year, we'd go back, every couple of years we'd go back to North Carolina, driving across the country, and we'd get a chance to spend time with our ancestors, our grandparents and our aunties and uncles and those who came before us. And we started to learn how to appreciate everything that they did for our family and everything that they sacrificed for our family. And so years later, as me and my sister, as we started to take over and be a part of the family business, you start to see that same exact thing happening. We're now telling the same stories that our parents told, and we built it on a building block so that the next generation will also know where they came from.
My parents have been involved in so many community activities, it's hard to even remember all of them. Like I said, my father was on the school board. My mother was the founding executive director for the NCNW chapter in the Inland Empire, the National Council of Negro Women. I think she was pregnant with me when she was involved in that. My dad was on different commissions in the city of San Bernardino. And they were doing all of this before the newspaper. The newspaper work for them started because they were looking for ways to get involved. And Sam Martin, who was a publisher of the American News, one of the older black newspapers in San Bernardino, had been working with my dad and my mother. My mother was a photographer. She was taking photos in the community. My father was writing a column. But I think the newspaper work that they did, just in volunteering, really kind of spoke to them. And when the opportunity arose for them to purchase the Black Voice News, they jumped on it. The paper, people think, my parents started it, but it was actually started by students at UC Riverside in about 1972.
They started this almost 50 years ago to tell the story of the Inland Empire, of people who didn't have a voice. And our goal is to continue to do that, not only through the foundation, but also through the newspaper and through all of our work here in the community. We want to make sure that we continue to tell the story of people who just don't have a voice. And although that is hard work, it is work that is inspiring, because we continue to hear the stories of people who've done amazing things in history. And our goal is to take someone like Jerry Gore, a regular person who grew up in Kentucky, a slave state, who comes from a family that were enslaved, but he inspired to educate the next generation. And as he inspired us, our goal was to continue to inspire others. And so we're really proud of the work that we're doing with that.
I think what my parents have, and I respect this about them, and we talk about it all the time. My husband, my siblings, and myself, talk about their authenticity, and they really do put the community first. And oftentimes people have an agenda. They really do, and I've never seen that with my parents. I mean, their agenda is just, we want this to be a better place for all residents, not just a select few. So I think that's why my parents are extremely authentic when it comes to the work they do. They started the Black Voice Foundation, and they started it in about 1980 or so. They started it with a mission to educate people in print media, print journalism. We have since expanded that, the expansion really came over time.
The foundation started off with exhibits a couple of years ago when we had a number of people, the Isaacs, who donated their African artifacts where they spent their entire career in Africa, different parts of Western Africa. And we took those pieces and we started to tell the story of everything that they did here in the community. There were local leaders who just had a passion and brought that passion back to the Inland Empire. And since then, we continue to grow and people continue to donate things to the foundation. And as a storyteller, one of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure that every person's story is well respected, but also told to the next generation. And I think that that's important. And that's what our foundation is really about, is making sure that we keep their stories alive. And we're starting to see the response from the community and students as they come in and see these exhibits. And it shows today as you're able to look at it.
I think that the work we do, and I see it every year when we go on our tour, we take, and the tours have grown, which is just amazing. When my mother started the tours, we did one a year. In the summer, one a year, maybe 35 people. Since my brother's taken over that tour, last year we did 4 tours, almost 50 people per tour. Next year, or this year, now we're in 2019, we'll have 5 tours.
I think the best way to thank my parents is to honor them the way that we're doing. To say thank you for putting in us a spark of curiosity, a curiosity to understand the story. Understanding that my parents fought whenever they were alone, but then they also figured out a way to bring people and bridge people together. And not only African Americans, but all communities. They were able to bridge those conversations and find commonalities so that everybody would understand that we are greater together than we are apart. As you look at this exhibit, one of the questions that we like to ask is, in 100 to 150 years, what do you want history to say about you? The decisions that you made today, what do you want history to say about you? How did you affect change for other people? And that's what it's about. That's what our parents taught us. And we're really proud, and we say thank you for everything that they did for us and allowing us to take it to the next generation. And we hope that this continues in the community as we travel out and go further and further with all of our work.